This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 263 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's topic is travelling for work and the question of, can you still be a thoughtful traveller when you're travelling for work? So the reason this came about is because I recently did travel for work myself for a couple of nights, and it had been a while since I'd done that and got me thinking, I suppose. Now, if you can hear some lovely, I hope lovely, I think they're lovely, bird noises in the background, some bird calls. I actually recorded these birds on my first morning away when I went for a walk, and so they're in the background here, so you can tell which bits were recorded while I was away, not this bit, and which bits are back at my desk. They've got birds. So I should confess, I also recorded some waves at the beach, and they sounded amazing when I was there, and listening back, they just sound like white noise. So the waves have been dumped. No pun intended. But I hope you enjoy the birds. Anyway, so this trip, which was just a couple of nights down to the southwest of Western Australia, got me really thinking about that intersection of travelling for work and of being a thoughtful traveller. Because I think sometimes when you're travelling for work, it's harder to be a thoughtful traveller, perhaps because things are less in your control. You're reliant on what a client wants or what your employer wants you to do. Timing is often more critical, and there's all sorts of other kind of restrictions on it. But I think, as with all kinds of travel, when we put some thought into it before, during and after the trip, then I think we can make it pretty thoughtful anyway. You'll decide, because I'm going to kind of have made these kind of diary entry recordings of my trip away and contemplated whether I was a thoughtful traveller or not, and really at the end you can decide. So my first recording was made on a Monday night under a blanket in a very echoey hotel room. So here it is. It's Monday. I am under a blanket in my hotel in Yallingup in Caves House. It's quite it's a heritage hotel. It's quite big and echoey, and there's quite a lot happening. There's piano playing downstairs that I can hear from my room. So I'm trying to soundproof things a bit by hovering under the blanket here for a bit until I can't breathe. So let's see how we go. So I just wanted to kind of put in an update from today, and my overarching theme for my reports of this week are, when you're travelling for work, can you still be a thoughtful traveller? Anyway, I'm pretty excited because this is my first night away from home in like 8 or 9 months or something crazy. I'm down in Margaret River for work to run some workshops for the Tourism Council, which is one of my favourite jobs. I get to combine, lots of my interests, social media, tourism people. It's lots of fun. So I left about lunchtime today. I had clients this morning, so it was a busy morning. I had to sort out who's looking after my cats and my son. Then I hit the road. So if you're not from Australia and you want to look it up, I started off in Perth and drove down through Mandurah and Bunbury and on to Busselton. And I stopped at the Busselton Jetty, which is a pretty iconic, amazing place and a great place to arrange to meet a friend. So I met up with my friend Pam. We both giggled because we had arranged to meet at 3:00, and I parked my car and walked up, found her, and as I arrived, the time ticked over to 3:00, and I hadn't really even checked, what time it was. I just arrived and I knew she'd be there, and we're both really punctual people, so we had a good giggle. So we went for a walk along the beautiful coastline there at Busselton and had a drink and a long chat. But then I had to move on, so back in the car, and had a lovely phone call with another friend, Catherine, for the rest of that drive. I don't often have time for that, so being out in the Aussie bush for a drive meant I did, which was delightful. And now I am in Caves House, which is this beautiful heritage hotel, lots of history to it, and lots of mentions of the history as well, which is always nice. So I've been quite nosy looking at what's around me. It's probably I'm here, I think, because most of the other accommodation around is fully booked. So I've been extra lucky to be put up here, I suspect, because it's schoolies week. So all our Year 12 students have finished school, finished exams, and they are celebrating. And down around this region, around Dunsborough and Busselton and Yallingup and so forth, there are lots of places where schoolies celebrate. So I checked in and I had dinner alone, or sort of alone. I mean, I sat alone, which I haven't done for ages and I always love. I actually took the current Thoughtful Travellers book club book, Sovietistan, to read. I did get a bit of reading done, but I also had a good chat to some of the other diners, managed to get the life story of one of the staff. I mean, as in I asked her, not that she bored me with it. She was lovely. And so, got to have a good chat. And now I am under this blanket recording this before I go to bed. So my question to myself is, have I been a thoughtful traveller today? I think so. Like I really... I don't know if I'm travelling slowly, but I didn't travel in a plane, so there's that. And there are no trains to come down this way. Maybe one day it would be great. I really enjoyed the drive. I enjoyed the view. I felt very grateful looking around, seeing the bush. Still a fair bit of green at this time of year. It won't be green for long. Parts are already fairly brown and there'll be more brown, but we've had a lot of late rain from our winter and it was just beautiful to see that. And to be honest, it is just really nice to be away from the city, and I'm looking forward to my work tomorrow because I actually love running workshops. It's heaps and heaps of fun, so that helps. So yeah, I'll check in again tomorrow. So I think in conclusion, I give myself half marks for being a thoughtful traveller. I don't think driving down, it's about a 3.5 hour drive, alone is a very sustainable option. But, especially in WA, there's not that many other options sometimes. So, I can't do everything. And in theory, of course, we could conduct these workshops virtually, but there's nothing that replaces the value of teaching people face-to-face. I have done a lot of both, and I really think it's worthwhile. And it's also good for them because they get to come together and meet other people from, the local industry and stuff. So it was, I think it's worth going down for. But what else did I do that was thoughtful? I think I met and talked with locals. That's an important part. I, checked in, chatted to some of the staff at the hotel. As I mentioned, kind of got some life stories. I like to ask questions and got to know some of the other people who are travelling down there as well. And I also think that solo dining is a very thoughtful approach. I know not everyone loves it, but I really, really, really do. And it's just a nice way to end the day when you're travelling. So that was Monday, and my next update is coming to you from Tuesday, under the blanket again. All right, it's Tuesday evening. I'm back in my hotel room under my soft soundproofing blanket, and I'm just wanting to report in on Tuesday's activities for this episode. So about half past 6, or a bit before, maybe 6:15 this morning, I got up and walked down to Yallingup Beach. It's not a long walk from the Caves House Hotel. It's a very downhill walk, so on the way back up was quite uphill, but it was actually breathtaking. I would turn the corner and see the beach and the vast stretch of sand and the bush up behind it, and this morning there was kind of a mist over the ocean, and it was absolutely, I just love those kind of situations. So really brilliant. And I know that the Cape to Cape track goes along that beach, so I imagined one day when our Cape to Cape plans finally come together that my friend Catherine and I will hopefully be walking along there, and if not, I don't know, I've given up nearly, but not quite. One day we'll get there. And after that, I headed off to run these workshops. They're on social media for Tourism Council members, so tourism businesses from like Busselton Jetty or, various tourist attractions, various accommodation places, tour operators, lots and lots of fabulous people
really enjoyed it and got to, have a good chat with lots of them. It was, they were great. It was also at an amazing location, I realised afterwards. Well, I kind of knew, but I didn't get a chance to look beforehand, and I just wandered down the road after we were finished about 4 o'clock, or 4:30, I suppose, by the time I finished up, and we're down at Smith's Beach, and another, literally breathtaking place. I'll share some pics in the show notes because just amazing. But I was proud of myself. I was taking pictures and video because, of course, I'd been speaking all day at these social media workshops about making sure you do such things, taking lots of pictures and stuff. And then I thought, okay, stop, Amanda. And I just stood and stared. And it's actually kind of tiring running workshops. I love it, but I do feel a bit exhausted after a full day of it. So I just stood and stared at the view. It was amazing. Came back to the hotel, a bit of a rest, and then I went down for dinner. And I'd taken my book, ready to eat alone, but then my Tourism Council organiser Leslie arrived just after me. She'd also brought a book to read. We both planned to be a bit antisocial, I think, but we arrived at the same time and had a fabulous chatty night instead. So it was lovely. So the question, was I a thoughtful traveller today? I think actually, yes, I really was. I mean, considering I spent most of the day working, but in the spare time I had, I did make the most of slowly experiencing the scenery and really just drinking it in, breathing it in. And I also got to chat with lots of locals at my workshop, especially had lunch with a few and got to hear all their stories about Schoolies Week at the moment and just general life in this southwest corner of Australia. So I give myself another tick, and now it's time for bed. I really just have to giggle at past Amanda for giving myself a tick. But I think, for a day that I was working most of the day, I still managed to have that ethos of a thoughtful traveller, I think. So I concur with past Amanda for that tick, I think. Now, of course, finally to finish up, I have a recording from the Wednesday. Not under the blanket because, of course, by Wednesday I had driven back up to Perth to finish off that little stint of working away. Now, I must note that I did try very hard to extend that trip and make it longer at one end or the other, but work and family commitments up in Perth made it prove impossible to do that. But that if I was really going to be a thoughtful traveller, I would try harder to tack on some more time in a place. I love the slow travel approach. Alas, this time that just couldn't work, but hopefully next time. Anyway, here is my recording from Wednesday. Okay, I'm reporting in from Wednesday. I am back in Perth, so I'm back at my desk, no longer cowering under that blanket. I've never wanted to steal a blanket as much as I wanted to steal that blanket because it was ridiculously soft. It was amazing. I did not, I promise. I do not have that blanket here, but it would, I really wanted to find out more. Anyway, enough about that blanket. I'm not under it. I'm at my desk, and an update on today. So before I left in the morning, I had to catch up on a few important emails and work stuff. Sometimes you have to do it. But doing it in a scenic place never really feels so much like work, I guess, unless I have heaps to do. And then I really, really miss my much more ergonomic desk. There was no desk in that hotel room at all, in fact, so I was working on my bed, but that's okay. Got what I needed to done, and then I could set off to start winding my way back to Perth. I started off, Michaela from Italy mentioned in the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group, because I'd posted about being in Yallingup, that when she visited Yallingup, she mentioned she found a bakery nearby, just kind of in the middle of the bush, but near Yallingup, which she claimed had the best bread she had tasted in Australia. So I thought, well, I'm right nearby. I must check that out on my way out of town. So it really was in the middle of nowhere. It was a wood-fired bread place, and I drove up eventually. I did actually drive past at first, turned around, found it. I could smell the wood burning from miles away, so it was definitely wood-fired oven there. Got a very tasty loaf of sourdough, which actually ended up being the main component of dinner that night because my son loves a good loaf of bread, so everyone was happy. And it was interesting for me to, discover a little place I wouldn't otherwise have found. So thank you, Michaela. From there, I drove over to the lighthouse at Cape Naturalist. So it's actually the starting point for the Cape to Cape walk, or the Cape to Cape track. And I'm actually not sure if I'd ever been to Cape Naturalist. I have definitely been to Cape Leeuwin, which is the other end of the Cape. There's a lighthouse there as well. Definitely been there several times. But actually, perhaps if I've been to Cape Naturalist, it must have been when I was a young child, because I don't really recall. But I wanted to stop by because it was so close. And of course, the start of the Cape to Cape track. So I arrived just as they opened at 9, and unfortunately I didn't have time to stay for their first tour of the actual lighthouse, but the bonus was I could still wander up. They have a really big kind of platform overlooking the ocean, just incredibly scenic, and a platform up at the lighthouse. And I was the only person there. I love being in, crazily scenic places and being there alone. It's a weird but wonderful feeling. And I'll make sure there's photos in the show notes of this as well. So from there, I moved on travelling north to Bunbury and met up with my friend Jo there. So it was lovely to see her. We realised it had actually been a year since we had last caught up, which was far too long. So we had a good chat and had some lunch and then left. As I passed the Bunbury Farmers Market, I popped in really quickly. I always do. If you're ever in Bunbury, go there. I always describe it as the IKEA of farmers markets, because you have to snake your way through the entire store, like in IKEA, to come out the other end. But it's so worth it. Got some good fruit and veg and a few treats for my son. It's just a really cool place. And speaking of my son, I got back to Perth home in time for school pickup. I promised him I would collect him. He hasn't had me go away for work for quite a while, so I wanted to kind of do the right thing. So, was I a thoughtful traveller on my last day? I think I was pretty thoughtful in terms of, experiencing a few places that are not touristy spots. So, food related though, the wood-fired bakery in the middle of nowhere and the farmers markets. I would have liked to spend more time everywhere, but, I had to get back, and that's just how it is sometimes. But overall, I think I did okay. But, if I could have travelled more slowly, that would have made a lot of parts of that trip more worthwhile. But, that's just how it is. It was still amazing to have a few days out of Perth. In these COVID years, I have really not had the opportunities to travel too much, and it was really, really, really refreshing. And so there ends my short working while travelling experience. It was fabulous to do it again. Back in the olden days being pre-pandemic, going away for work was something I did several times a year, whether it was to give a talk or to run workshops or to go to a conference. And it's something I actually really enjoy doing for lots and lots of different reasons. But anyway, hopefully there'll be more of that coming up in the future. Fingers crossed. It was really interesting to try and do it with a thoughtful travel lens on. And I think I did okay, although there's lots of things I could do better. And I think all of us were always striving to become more thoughtful travellers. So, live and learn and keep going, I say. Now, I did ask in the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group for other members' experiences of working while travelling for work, and asked them how they thought they were being thoughtful travellers when they did it. So a few of those highlights, for example, Jane, who talked about travelling on quite long trips for work and up to months. And she said that the aim was to immerse in the community and become very local. And I think that that's exactly right. When you're travelling for a longer term, that becomes quite possible and definitely desirable, whether you're short term or long term. Leslie, I know she's based here in Perth and travels quite a lot for work. and funnily enough answered my question while she was waiting at the airport, waiting to board a plane. So she said that she pays for carbon offsets and she stays in local businesses and tries to be aware of cultural and local sensibilities, although it's not always easy. But, trying to be aware is always the best start. So there's that. Justin talked about preferring to be staying at a hotel within walking distance of the site he's working at, and said that that's kind of an extension of how he travels, being within walking distance of things worth seeing and doing. And the Barefoot Backpacker actually echoed this kind of sentiment, talking about trying to book hotels that were within walking distance or public transport when they travelled for work as well, and mentioned that their company, or their previous company, were happy to play with their passion for trains to minor stations rather than what people usually did. So yes, the Barefoot Backpacker definitely was always trying to be a thoughtful traveller, I think, and prepared to stand up for themselves to their company, which but it worked. So often it's just a matter of of citing a preference, and if there's minimal cost difference, then you can often be a more thoughtful traveller. Now, Ina up in Norway had a lovely answer. She said she travels a lot for work, visiting childcare, families and professionals. And she says when she sits on a bus or a train, she imagines, feeling like a tourist, and then she can suddenly see more with kind of new eyes. She chooses to walk and remembers to look just not forward or down to the street, but also upwards. And she said, suddenly you see details in buildings, I try to catch the sky and my thoughts in everyday asphalt. I think that's beautiful. You're like a poet, Ina. And I think that's really true. Whether we're travelling for work or whether we're just living our lives, you can actually kind of put that tourist mindset on, and it can be quite powerful. So I really love those responses, and I think even when we're travelling for work, it is possible to be a thoughtful traveller, or at least to be more thoughtful, and definitely worth striving for. So yeah, I thought that was interesting for me to try that out. So thank you very much for listening to episode 263 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. There are no special links this week, just a reminder to come and join either or both of our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Different content happens in both, and some overlap of people, but lots of different stuff happening. So the Facebook group, if you just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook, you'll find us there. And to get to the LinkedIn one, go to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. And of course, you can see these links in the show notes as well. And in the show notes, I'm going to post some pictures of Yallingup Beach and Smiths Beach, so you can see for yourself how breathtaking they were. They really were. Amazing. So the show notes for this episode will be at notaballerina.com/263. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.